My name is Margaret, and I'm 62 years old. For the past 3 months, I've been living in a small apartment downtown, staring at the walls and wondering how my own daughter could have said those words to me. Mom, you're too poor for my wedding. I don't want you embarrassing me in front of Richard's family. Those words still echo in my mind every single day, cutting deeper than any knife ever could. You see, my daughter Emma was getting married to Richard, a man from what she called high society. His family owned several businesses, lived in mansions, and apparently my presence at their wedding would be inappropriate. I remember standing in her kitchen that Tuesday afternoon, holding the invitation I had been so excited to receive, when she looked me straight in the eyes and delivered those devastating words. I've worked so hard to fit into Richard's world, Mom. His mother already thinks I'm beneath them because I didn't grow up with money. If you show up in your clothes and talk about your little cleaning jobs, it'll ruin everything for me. She said it so casually, as if she was discussing the weather, not destroying her mother's heart. I had raised Emma by myself since she was 5 years old. Her father left us with nothing but debt and broken promises. I worked 3 jobs to put her through college, cleaned offices at night, waited tables during the day, and took care of elderly people on weekends. My hands were rough from years of scrubbing floors, my back ached from bending over other people's messes, but I never complained because it was all for her. That day, standing in her beautiful kitchen that I had helped her afford, I felt something break inside me. Not just my heart, but something deeper. My own daughter was ashamed of me. The woman who had sacrificed everything for her success was now too embarrassing to be seen at her wedding. Emma, sweetheart, I don't understand. I'm your mother. I've been dreaming of this day since you were a little girl. My voice was shaking, and I could feel tears starting to form in my eyes. Mom, please don't make this harder than it has to be. Richard's family is very important. His father owns 3 companies, and his mother sits on charity boards. They're sophisticated people. You just wouldn't fit in. She turned away from me, unable to even look at me while she destroyed me. The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear the expensive grandfather clock in her hallway, ticking away the seconds, marking the end of the relationship I thought we had. I looked around her kitchen, at the granite countertops I had helped pay for with my cleaning money, at the stainless steel appliances I had contributed to when she first moved in. Everything in that house was a testament to my love and sacrifice, yet she saw only my inadequacy. You know, Emma, I said quietly, my voice steadier than I felt. I remember when you were 8 years old and you got sick with pneumonia. I sat by your hospital bed for 3 days straight, holding your hand, singing you lullabies. The nurses had to force me to eat because I wouldn't leave your side. Do you remember what you said to me when you finally woke up? She didn't answer, but I could see her jaw tighten. You said, Mommy, you're the best mommy in the whole world. I never want to be away from you. And I promised you that day that I would always be there for you, no matter what. My voice was breaking now, but I continued. I guess promises don't mean much when they come from someone too poor to matter. I left her house that day, feeling like I had been hit by a truck. The woman I had given my entire life to had just told me I wasn't good enough to witness the most important day of her life. But what Emma didn't know, what she had never bothered to ask about, was that her poor mother had been keeping some very big secrets. Let me tell you about the woman Emma was so ashamed of. I wasn't always a cleaning lady working multiple jobs. Before Emma's father destroyed our lives, I had been an accountant with a bright future. I had dreams, ambitions, and a small but growing savings account. But when he left us drowning in debt, I had to make a choice: declare bankruptcy and start over, or sacrifice my career to pay off every single penny he owed. I chose to pay the debts, not because I had to legally, but because I couldn't bear the thought of Emma growing up knowing her family had run away from their responsibilities. So I sold everything we had, took those cleaning jobs, and spent the next 15 years of my life working myself to the bone. Every morning, I would wake up at 4 a.m. to clean office buildings before Emma woke up for school. I wanted her to see me as a mother, not as someone who scrubbed toilets for a living. I would come home, make her breakfast, help her with homework, and then head to my day job at the restaurant. Evenings were for elderly care, weekends were for extra cleaning jobs, and somehow, in between all of that, I managed to be the mother Emma needed. I never missed a school play, never missed a parent-teacher conference, never missed a birthday or a graduation. When Emma wanted to take piano lessons, I worked extra shifts. When she wanted to go to summer camp, I cleaned houses on my days off. When she got into college, I took out loans and worked even more jobs to make sure she could focus on her studies instead of worrying about money. Emma was my pride and joy. She was smart, beautiful, and ambitious. She graduated with honors, got a good job at a marketing firm, and eventually met Richard at some corporate event. I was so proud of the woman she had become. I thought I had given her everything she needed to succeed in life. What I didn't realize was that in my effort to shield her from our financial struggles, I had also shielded her from understanding the value of hard work and sacrifice. She saw my jobs as embarrassing, not as the foundation that had built her entire life. She saw my worn hands as shameful, not as proof of a mother's love. But here's what Emma never knew. Even while working those embarrassing jobs, I had been slowly, carefully building something much bigger. You see, I might have been cleaning offices, but I was also paying attention to the businesses I cleaned. I was learning, observing, and most importantly, saving every penny I could. Those wealthy business owners whose offices I cleaned at night, they had no idea that the quiet woman emptying their trash cans was listening to their phone calls, reading their discarded documents, and learning about their investment strategies. I might have been invisible to them, but I was absorbing everything. I remember one particular night, cleaning the office of a real estate mogul named Harrison Wells. He had left some documents on his desk about a property deal that was about to go public. The next morning, I took every dollar I had saved and invested it in that property company. 6 months later, when the deal was announced, my small investment had tripled. That was the beginning of my secret financial education. I started reading every business magazine I could get my hands on, studying market trends during my lunch breaks, and carefully investing the money I earned from my cleaning jobs. While Emma was growing up thinking her mother was just a poor woman scrubbing floors, I was actually building a portfolio that would have shocked her. I learned about cryptocurrency before most people had even heard the word. I invested in tech startups that seemed risky, but showed promise. I bought small properties in neighborhoods that I knew would gentrify because I cleaned the offices of the developers planning those changes. Every night, while Emma slept peacefully in her bed, her poor mother was becoming something entirely different. By the time Emma graduated college, I had accumulated more wealth than she could have imagined. But I kept living modestly, kept working those jobs, kept letting her believe I was struggling financially. I wanted her to value education, hard work, and character over money. I wanted her to love me for who I was, not what I had. What I didn't realize was that I was creating a monster who would eventually be ashamed of the very sacrifices that had built her world. The changes in Emma started about 2 years ago, right after she got serious with Richard. At first, it was small things that I tried to ignore. She stopped inviting me to her apartment when she knew Richard would be there. She would make excuses about why I couldn't meet his friends. She started talking differently, using words and phrases that sounded forced and unnatural. I remember the first time she corrected my grammar in front of someone else. We were at a coffee shop, and I was telling her about my week when she interrupted me. "Mom, it's I saw, not I seen." She said it with this embarrassed laugh, like I was a child who needed to be taught proper English. The woman sitting at the next table looked over at us, and I felt my cheeks burn with shame. Then came the clothes comments. "Mom, you really should update your wardrobe. Those clothes are so dated." She said it like she was trying to help, but I could hear the judgment in her voice. These were the same clothes I had worn to her college graduation, the same clothes she had once complimented me on. The worst part was how she started lying about me to other people. I found out by accident when I overheard her on the phone with one of Richard's friends. She was explaining why I couldn't come to some dinner party they were having. "Oh, my mom is traveling for work," she said. "She's in consulting now, very busy, always flying somewhere." I was standing right there in her kitchen, having just finished cleaning her bathroom because she had mentioned it was dirty. She was ashamed of what I did for a living, so she created this fantasy version of me that would be acceptable to Richard's crowd. In her stories, I was a successful consultant who traveled the world, not a woman who cleaned their offices while they slept. The exclusions became more frequent and more obvious. Birthday dinners where I wasn't invited because it's just going to be Richard's family. Holiday parties where I was told it's more of a couple's thing. Work events where she said spouses only, even though I had seen her post pictures with other people's parents. Each exclusion felt like a small death. I would sit in my apartment, looking at the photos she posted on social media, seeing her laughing and celebrating with people who were apparently more worthy of her time than her own mother. I started to feel like a secret she was keeping, something shameful that needed to be hidden. The transformation was gradual, but unmistakable. The daughter who used to call me every day started calling once a week, then once every 2 weeks. Our conversations became shorter, more superficial. She stopped asking about my work, stopped sharing details about her life, stopped treating me like someone whose opinion mattered. I watched her adopt Richard's family's mannerisms, their way of speaking, their attitudes about money and class. She started using phrases like, people like us, and our kind of people. And it was clear that I didn't fit into either category. She began judging restaurants by their prices rather than their food, choosing friends based on their connections rather than their character. But the moment I knew things had gone too far was at her engagement party. Richard's parents had thrown this elaborate celebration at their country club, and Emma had reluctantly invited me. I spent weeks preparing, bought a new dress with money I had been saving for months, and showed up excited to celebrate my daughter's happiness. The entire evening, Emma avoided me. When Richard's mother asked about my work, Emma quickly changed the subject. When someone complimented the beautiful relationship Emma and I must have, she gave a tight smile and walked away. I spent 3 hours at that party feeling like an unwelcome stranger at my own daughter's celebration. I remember standing by the champagne fountain, watching Emma laugh with Richard's cousins, and realizing that she was performing. Every gesture, every laugh, every conversation was carefully calculated to prove that she belonged in their world. And my presence threatened that performance because I was a reminder of where she had come from. That night, driving home alone, I realized that my daughter wasn't just embarrassed by my circumstances. She was embarrassed by me as a person. The woman who had given her everything had become someone she wanted to erase from her new life. But what she didn't know was that her embarrassing mother was about to teach her a lesson about respect that she would never forget. The engagement party was just the beginning. Over the next few months, Emma's treatment of me went from embarrassing to downright cruel. She started making comments about my appearance, my speech, my mannerisms. Mom, you really need to work on your posture. You walk like someone who's been cleaning floors for years. The way she said it, with such disgust, made me feel like I was something dirty that needed to be scrubbed away. Richard's family made things worse. His mother, Patricia, was one of those women who smiled with her mouth, but never with her eyes. She would ask me questions that seemed innocent, but were designed to highlight how different I was from them. Oh, Margaret, how interesting that you work in maintenance. That must be so fulfilling. The pause before maintenance was always long enough to make sure everyone heard exactly what she thought of my job. Richard's father was even worse. He would completely ignore me when I spoke, looking right through me as if I wasn't there. When I tried to contribute to conversations about business or current events, he would turn to someone else and start a completely different topic. I wasn't just invisible to him. I was beneath his notice entirely. But the worst part was watching Emma not only allow this treatment, but participate in it. When Patricia made her snide comments, Emma would laugh along. When Richard's father ignored me, Emma would rush to fill the silence with some story about Richard's accomplishments. She was so desperate to fit in with them that she was willing to sacrifice her own mother's dignity. The breaking point came at the wedding dress shopping appointment. Emma had initially told me it was just going to be the two of us, a special mother-daughter moment. I was so excited. I had been dreaming of this day, imagining how we would cry together when she found the perfect dress, how we would bond over this milestone moment. But when I arrived at the bridal boutique, Patricia was there with 2 of her friends. Emma hadn't told me they were coming. I felt ambushed, but I tried to make the best of it. I complimented Emma on each dress, shared in her excitement, and tried to be the supportive mother I had always been. That's when Patricia made her comment. Emma was trying on this gorgeous dress that cost more than I made in 6 months, and I said, "Oh, sweetheart, you look like a princess." Patricia laughed, this cold, sharp sound, and said, "Well, I suppose everyone has their own idea of what royalty looks like." Emma should have defended me. She should have told Patricia that her comment was inappropriate and hurtful. Instead, she looked embarrassed and said, "Mom, maybe you could help me with the back of this dress?" It was her way of getting me to be quiet, to make me useful instead of vocal. The humiliation continued throughout the appointment. Patricia's friends made comments about how quaint my opinions were, how sweet it was that I was so involved in Emma's life. They spoke about me like I was a child, patting my hand condescendingly when I tried to contribute to the conversation. But the absolute worst moment came when we were discussing the wedding guest list. I was sitting in Emma's living room, trying to help her organize the RSVPs, when she casually mentioned that she was having trouble with the seating arrangements. "There are just so many important people coming, Mom. Richard's father's business partners, his mother's charity friends, people from his firm. I'm trying to figure out where to put everyone." She was shuffling through papers, not even looking at me. "Well, honey, you don't need to worry about me. I'm just happy to be there. Put me anywhere." I was trying to be accommodating, to make her planning easier. I watched her face change as she considered my words. There was a calculation happening behind her eyes, a weighing of options that made my stomach turn. I could see her imagining me at those tables full of important people, imagining the conversations I might have, the impression I might make. "Actually, Mom," she said slowly, "I've been thinking about the guest list, and there might be some complications." The way she said complications made it clear that I was the complication she was referring to. That's when she looked up at me with this expression I had never seen before. It was a mixture of frustration, embarrassment, and something that looked almost like hatred. "Actually, Mom, that's what I wanted to talk to you about. I've been thinking, and I really don't think you should come to the wedding." The words hung in the air like poison. I couldn't have heard her correctly. "What did you say, Emma?" She couldn't look at me directly. She kept shuffling those papers, avoiding eye contact like a child who had been caught in a lie. "I said I don't think you should come to the wedding. It's going to be very formal, very sophisticated. Richard's family has certain expectations, and I just think it would be better if..." "If what, Emma? If your mother wasn't there on the most important day of your life?" My voice was barely a whisper. I felt like I was drowning, like the air had been sucked out of the room. "Mom, please don't be dramatic. It's not about you personally. It's about the image we're trying to project. Richard's father is considering him for a partnership in his firm, and this wedding is basically a business event. Everyone who matters in their industry will be there, and I can't afford to have anything go wrong." "Anything go wrong? You mean me, your mother, the woman who raised you, who sacrificed everything for you, who worked 3 jobs so you could have the education that got you this life in the first place." I was standing now, my hands shaking with rage and heartbreak. "That's exactly what I'm talking about." Emma finally looked at me, and her eyes were cold. "You always make everything about your sacrifices, about how hard you worked, about how much you gave up. Do you know how embarrassing that is? Do you know what it's like to have your mother constantly reminding everyone that she's a martyr?" Her words hit me like physical blows. "A martyr? Emma, I never asked for gratitude. I never asked for recognition. I just wanted to be your mother." "Well, maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to stay poor." The cruelty in her voice was breathtaking. "Maybe you should have thought about that before you chose to clean toilets instead of building a real career. Maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to be an embarrassment." I felt something die inside me at that moment. Not just my heart, but my spirit, my sense of self, everything I had built my identity around for the past 25 years. My own daughter, the person I loved more than life itself, had just told me that I was an embarrassment, that my love was unwanted, that my presence was a liability. "You know what, Emma? You're right. I am poor. I am embarrassing. I did clean toilets and scrub floors and work jobs that your new family would look down on. But I did all of that for you. Every single day, every single sacrifice, every single moment of exhaustion and humiliation was for you." "I never asked you to do that," she screamed back at me. "I never asked you to be a martyr. I never asked you to make me feel guilty for wanting a better life without your mother in it. Yes, if that's what it takes, then yes." The words came out of her mouth like bullets, each one designed to kill whatever was left of our relationship. I stood there in her beautiful living room, surrounded by the life I had helped her build, and realized that I had created a monster. In my effort to give her everything, I had raised a woman who valued money over love, status over loyalty, appearance over substance. The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear my own heartbeat, could feel the blood rushing in my ears. 25 years of love, sacrifice, and devotion had just been dismissed as an embarrassment. The child I had held through nightmares, The teenager I had supported through heartbreaks, the young woman I had cheered through graduations, had just told me I wasn't worthy of witnessing her wedding. "You know, Emma," I said, my voice eerily calm, "I've spent your entire life protecting you from the truth about money, about power, about what really matters in this world. I wanted you to be innocent, to believe in love and family and loyalty. But you've just shown me that you're not the woman I thought I raised." "What's that supposed to mean?" she asked, but I could hear uncertainty creeping into her voice. "It means that you have no idea who your poor, embarrassing mother really is. You have no idea what I'm capable of. You have no idea what I've been building while you've been looking down on me." I picked up my purse, my hand steady now, my voice growing stronger with each word. "All right, Emma. You don't want me at your wedding? Fine. You don't want me in your new life? Fine. But let me tell you something, sweetheart. You have no idea who your poor, embarrassing mother really is. You have no idea what I'm capable of, and you're about to find out." I walked out of her house that day knowing that everything had changed. My daughter had made her choice, and now I was going to make mine. What Emma didn't know was that her poor mother had been playing a much longer game than she could ever imagine, and the game was about to begin. The morning after Emma disinvited me from her wedding, I sat in my modest apartment and smiled for the first time in months. You see, while my daughter was busy being ashamed of her poor mother, I had been building something extraordinary. For the past 15 years, while she thought I was just a cleaning lady scrubbing floors, I had been creating a financial empire that would have made Richard's family look like amateurs. It all started with those late-night cleaning jobs in corporate offices. While I emptied trash cans and dusted desks, I was also reading discarded financial reports, overhearing phone conversations about upcoming deals, and learning the secrets of wealth from the very people who looked right through me. Being invisible had its advantages. No one pays attention to the cleaning lady, which meant I had access to information that insider traders would kill for. My first major breakthrough came when I was cleaning the offices of Morrison & Associates, a high-end investment firm. The partners would often work late, making international calls about currency fluctuations in emerging markets. I started taking notes on everything I heard, researching the companies they mentioned, and slowly building my own investment strategy. Within 2 years, I had turned my small savings into a substantial portfolio. I invested in tech companies before they went public, bought cryptocurrency when it was still considered a joke, and purchased real estate in neighborhoods I knew would gentrify because I cleaned the offices of the developers planning those changes. Every dollar I earned from my embarrassing jobs was carefully invested and reinvested. But my real genius move came 5 years ago when I started buying businesses. Not big, flashy companies that would attract attention, but small, profitable enterprises that generated steady income. I owned 3 cleaning companies, 2 catering services, a property management firm, and a chain of laundromats. Emma had no idea that her poor mother was actually employing over 200 people. The irony was delicious. While Emma was desperately trying to climb the social ladder by marrying into Richard's family, her mother had already built a ladder that reached much higher than theirs ever could. I had more liquid assets than Richard's father, owned more properties than his mother's charity friends, and had business connections that spanned 3 continents. But the crown jewel of my empire was something Emma would never have expected. 2 years ago, I had quietly purchased a controlling interest in Grandview Manor, the exclusive venue where Emma was planning to hold her wedding. The same venue that Richard's family had bragged about booking, the same venue that was supposedly so prestigious that my presence would somehow diminish its elegance. I had been planning this moment for longer than Emma could imagine. Every slight, every embarrassed look, every exclusion had been carefully catalogued and would soon be repaid with interest. My daughter wanted to play games about who was worthy of what. Well, she was about to learn that her mother had been playing a much bigger game all along. The beauty of my plan was its simplicity. Emma thought she was marrying into money and power, but she had no idea that her embarrassing mother controlled more wealth than her future in-laws could dream of. She thought she was escaping her humble beginnings, but she was about to discover that those beginnings had been an illusion all along. I picked up my phone and called my lawyer, a man who had been handling my business affairs for years without Emma ever knowing he existed. "James, it's time to execute the plan we discussed. I want everything ready by tomorrow morning." The satisfaction in my voice was unmistakable. My daughter had made her choice. She had chosen status over love, appearance over substance, Richard's family over her own mother. Now she was going to learn what it really meant to have power and what it felt like to lose everything in a single moment. The weeks following Emma's cruel dismissal were fascinating to observe. While I quietly put my plan into motion, she and Richard's family continued their wedding preparations with the arrogance of people who believed they controlled everything. They had no idea that the woman they had dismissed as an embarrassment was orchestrating their downfall from the shadows. I watched Emma's social media posts with a mixture of amusement and disgust. Photos of dress fittings, cake tastings, venue tours, all at locations I either owned or had significant influence over. She was so proud of her sophisticated wedding plans, so excited to show off her new social status, completely oblivious to the fact that her poor mother was pulling the strings behind every detail. The most delicious part was listening to her phone calls. Emma would call me occasionally, not out of love or regret, but to make sure I understood my place in her new world. "Mom, I hope you understand that this is for the best. Richard's family has been so welcoming, and I just can't risk anything disrupting that relationship." She spoke to me like I was a child who needed to be managed, not the woman who had built the very foundation of her success. During one particularly condescending call, she actually had the audacity to offer me money. "Mom, I know this might be difficult for you financially, not being able to work as much as you used to. Richard and I talked about it, and we'd like to help you out. Maybe we could set up a small monthly allowance just to make sure you're comfortable." The pity in her voice was nauseating. I played along perfectly. "Oh, Emma, that's so generous of you. I don't know what I'd do without your help." Inside, I was laughing. My generous daughter was offering me a few $100s a month while I was generating more income in a day than she made in a year. Richard's family was even more entertaining to watch. Patricia had taken to calling me occasionally, ostensibly to check on my well-being, but really to remind me of my place. "Margaret, dear, I hope you're not too disappointed about the wedding situation." Emma explained everything to us, and we completely understand her position. These events can be so overwhelming for people who aren't used to, well, this level of society. I let her condescend to me, let her believe she was being gracious by acknowledging my existence at all. What she didn't know was that I had been quietly investigating her family's finances, and what I had discovered was fascinating. Richard's father's businesses were heavily leveraged, his mother's charity work was more about social climbing than actual philanthropy, and their old money reputation was built on debts that went back 3 generations. The wedding preparations continued with increasing extravagance. Emma posted photos of the flowers being arranged at Grandview Manor, the same venue I owned. She shared pictures of the catering menu, provided by one of my companies. She bragged about the exclusive photographer, who was actually under contract with my property management firm. Every detail of her sophisticated wedding was being orchestrated by the mother she was too ashamed to invite. But the most satisfying moment came when Emma called to tell me about the final guest count. "Mom, you wouldn't believe how many important people are coming. Richard's father's business partners, 3 city council members, the mayor's wife, and even some state legislators. It's going to be the social event of the year." The pride in her voice was sickening. "That sounds wonderful, sweetheart. I'm sure it will be everything you dreamed of." I kept my voice neutral, supportive even. Let her have her moment of triumph. It would make what came next even more devastating. What Emma didn't know was that many of those important people were actually business associates of mine. The city council members had approved zoning changes for my properties. The mayor's wife sat on the board of one of my charitable foundations, and those state legislators had been lobbied by firms I had hired. Her wedding wasn't just going to be a social event. It was going to be a demonstration of power that she would never see coming. I spent those weeks playing the role of the defeated mother perfectly. I was humble, grateful for their occasional attention, and appropriately ashamed of my circumstances. I let them believe they had won, that they had successfully excluded the embarrassing element from their perfect day. But every night, I would sit in my apartment and review the final details of my plan. Bank transfers, legal documents, contract cancellations, property deeds. Everything was in place. Emma wanted a wedding that would establish her place in high society. She was going to get exactly that, just not in the way she expected. The irony was perfect. My daughter, who had spent months planning the most important day of her life, had no idea that her poor, embarrassing mother was about to give her a wedding gift she would never forget. The morning of Emma's wedding dawned bright and clear, perfect weather for what she believed would be the most important day of her life. I woke up early, made myself a cup of coffee, and prepared to watch 25 years of careful planning come to fruition. Today, my daughter would learn what it really meant to have power, and what it felt like to lose everything in a single moment. At 9 a.m., exactly 3 hours before the ceremony was scheduled to begin, I made my first phone call. James, initiate phase 1. My lawyer had been waiting for this moment as eagerly as I had. Within minutes, the first wave of my plan was set in motion. The first sign of trouble came when the catering trucks arrived at Grandview Manor and were turned away at the gate. The head of security, who worked directly for me, informed them that there had been a change in management and that all vendor contracts had been canceled effective immediately. The confusion was immediate and absolute. Emma's phone started ringing at 9:15 a.m. I could imagine her panic as vendor after vendor called to inform her that their services were no longer available. The florists, the photographers, the musicians, the decorators, everyone who had been hired to make her day perfect was suddenly unavailable due to contractual issues. By 9:30 a.m., Emma was calling me in hysterics. "Mom, something terrible is happening. All our vendors are canceling at the last minute. They're saying there are problems with the venue, that contracts have been terminated. I don't understand what's going on." I let her panic for a moment before responding. "Oh my goodness, Emma, that sounds awful. Is there anything I can do to help?" My voice was perfectly concerned, perfectly innocent. "I don't know. Richard's father is making phone calls, trying to figure out what happened. His business connections should be able to sort this out, but everyone keeps saying the same thing, that there's been a change in ownership and all previous arrangements are void." Change in ownership? What could that mean? I asked, though of course I knew exactly what it meant. At 10 a.m., Phase 2 began. Emma and Richard arrived at Grandview Manor to find the gates locked and a security team preventing anyone from entering the property. A sign had been posted, "Property closed for private event. No unauthorized personnel permitted." Emma called me again, this time sobbing. "Mom, they won't let us into our own wedding venue. The security guards are saying the property is under new management and that we don't have permission to be here. Richard's father is furious, but they won't listen to him. They keep asking for someone named Margaret Thompson to authorize our entry." Margaret Thompson. My maiden name, the name I had used for all my business dealings to keep them separate from Emma's life. The name that was now on the deed to Grandview Manor and every other property that was supposed to host her perfect wedding. "Margaret Thompson?" I repeated, as if the name meant nothing to me. "I wonder who that could be." At 10:30 a.m., Richard's father arrived with his lawyer, demanding to speak to whoever was in charge. The head of security handed him an envelope containing a letter I had written specifically for this moment. I had spent weeks crafting every word, every sentence designed to deliver maximum impact. The letter was simple and devastating. "To the Whitmore family and Miss Emma Thompson, you are hereby notified that Grandview Manor, along with all associated vendor contracts, has been acquired by Thompson Holdings, LLC. As the new owner, I am exercising my right to cancel all existing reservations and contracts effective immediately. The property is no longer available for your event. Sincerely, Margaret Thompson, CEO, Thompson Holdings." Emma called me for the third time, her voice barely coherent through her tears. "Mom, the most impossible thing is happening. The person who bought the venue has the same last name as us, Margaret Thompson. Can you believe the coincidence? Richard's father thinks it might be some kind of mistake, that maybe we can work something out if we can contact this woman." "What an incredible coincidence," I said, my voice steady as a rock. "Margaret Thompson. That's such a common name, isn't it?" At 11 a.m., 1 hour before the ceremony was supposed to begin, I decided it was time for the final revelation. I drove to Grandview Manor, where I found Emma, Richard, and both their families standing outside the locked gates in their wedding attire, looking like refugees from their own celebration. I parked my modest car and walked toward the group. Emma saw me first, her face lighting up with desperate hope. "Mom, thank God you're here. Maybe you can help us figure out what to do. This whole thing is a nightmare." I walked up to the security gate and nodded to the head of security. "Good morning, Marcus," I believe these people are here about the wedding reservation? Yes, Ms. Thompson. I've been explaining to them that the property is no longer available for their event. The moment Marcus called me Ms. Thompson, I watched the color drain from Emma's face. Richard's father stepped forward, his expression shifting from confusion to dawning realization. "You're Margaret Thompson?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I smiled, the first genuine smile I had worn in months. "Yes, I am. And you're standing on my property." The silence that followed my revelation was absolute. Emma stood there in her wedding dress, her face cycling through confusion, disbelief, and finally, horrified understanding. Richard's mouth hung open like he was trying to catch flies. Patricia looked like she had seen a ghost, and Richard's father appeared to be calculating exactly how much money he had just lost by underestimating the poor cleaning lady. "Your property?" Emma whispered, her voice barely audible. "Mom, what are you talking about? This is Grandview Manor. This is where I'm supposed to get married. This is mine," I said simply. "I bought it 2 years ago, along with most of the vendors you hired for today. The catering company? Mine. The floral arrangements? My business. The photography studio? I own the building they lease from. Even the string quartet you hired works exclusively for my events company." I watched as the full scope of what I had done began to sink in. Emma's perfect wedding, the social event that was supposed to establish her place in Richard's world, had been orchestrated entirely by the mother she was too ashamed to invite. "But how?" Richard's father demanded, his composure finally cracking. "How could you afford all this? You're a cleaning lady?" I finished for him. "Yes, I am. I'm also a real estate investor, a business owner, and apparently someone you should have treated with a little more respect." I pulled out my phone and showed him a screenshot of my portfolio. "I'm worth approximately $47 million, Mr. Whitmore. How much are you worth?" The number hit them like a physical blow. Richard actually staggered backward, and Patricia made a sound like she was choking, but it was Emma's reaction that satisfied me the most. She looked at me like she was seeing me for the first time, like the woman she thought she knew had been replaced by a complete stranger. "47 million?" she repeated, her voice hollow. "But you live in that tiny apartment. You work those jobs. You drive that old car. I live modestly because I choose to," I explained. "I work those jobs because they taught me the value of honest labor and gave me access to information that built my fortune. I drive that old car because it's reliable and doesn't attract attention. Everything you saw as embarrassing about me was actually the foundation of my success." The wedding guests had started arriving, only to find the gates locked and the bride's family standing outside in obvious distress. I could see them gathering in confused clusters, whispering among themselves, taking pictures with their phones. Emma's social media perfect wedding was becoming a very public disaster. "Mom, please," Emma said, tears streaming down her face, ruining her carefully applied makeup. "I know I hurt you. I know I said terrible things. But please don't do this. Please don't ruin my wedding day. I'll do anything to make this right." "Anything?" I asked, my voice cold as ice. "Would you have done anything to avoid hurting me in the first place? Would you have done anything to defend me when Richard's family insulted me? Would you have done anything to include me in the most important day of your life?" She had no answer for that, because we both knew the truth. She wouldn't have done anything for me when it mattered. She had chosen Richard's family over her own mother, chosen status over love, chosen appearance over loyalty. "You know what the saddest part of all this is, Emma?" I continued. "I would have given you the wedding of your dreams. I would have paid for everything, invited everyone, made sure it was perfect in every way. All you had to do was treat me with basic human decency. All you had to do was remember that I was your mother." Richard's father tried to salvage the situation. "Ms. Thompson, surely we can work something out. Name your price. What will it take to resolve this situation?" I laughed, a sound that held no warmth whatsoever. "Mr. Whitmore, you think this is about money? You think you can buy your way out of the consequences of your family's cruelty? This isn't about money. This is about respect. This is about a mother who gave everything for her daughter, only to be told she wasn't good enough to witness that daughter's happiness." The crowd of wedding guests was growing larger, and I could see people taking videos, posting on social media. Emma's humiliation was becoming very public, very quickly. The social event that was supposed to elevate her status was instead destroying her reputation in real time. Please, Mom, Emma begged, falling to her knees in her wedding dress. Please don't do this to me. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything I said, everything I did. I was wrong. I was horrible. But please, don't destroy my life over this. I looked down at my daughter, kneeling in the dirt in her expensive wedding dress, and felt nothing. No satisfaction, no revenge, no triumph. Just emptiness where my love for her used to be. Emma, I'm not destroying your life. I'm showing you what your life actually looks like when you strip away the pretense and the lies. This is who you really are. Someone who would sacrifice her own mother for social status. And this is who I really am. Someone with the power to give you everything or take it all away. I turned to walk back to my car, leaving them standing there in their wedding finery, surrounded by confused guests and locked out of their own celebration. But I had one more thing to say. The venue will be available for your wedding, Emma. But only if you can answer one question honestly, in front of all these people. Do you love Richard, or do you love what Richard represents? Emma knelt there in her wedding dress, surrounded by confused guests and the ruins of her perfect day, while my question hung in the air like a sword waiting to fall. Do you love Richard, or do you love what Richard represents? It was the question that would determine not just the fate of her wedding, but the future of our relationship and the woman she would choose to become. I watched her face as she processed what I was asking. This wasn't about money or venues or social status anymore. This was about truth, about the kind of person she had become, and the kind of person she wanted to be going forward. The crowd of wedding guests pressed closer, phones recording, social media broadcasting her moment of reckoning to the world. Richard stepped forward, his face flushed with anger and embarrassment. This is insane. You can't hold our wedding hostage over some family drama. Emma, tell her we'll find another venue. Tell her we don't need her or her money. But Emma wasn't looking at Richard. She was looking at me, and for the first time in 2 years, I saw something in her eyes that reminded me of the little girl I had raised. Not the calculating social climber she had become, but the daughter who used to curl up in my lap and tell me I was the best mommy in the world. She started, then stopped. Her voice was shaking, and I could see her hands trembling as she clutched her wedding dress. I don't know how to answer that question, Mom. Yes, you do, I said quietly. You've always known. The question is whether you're brave enough to tell the truth. The silence stretched on for what felt like hours. Richard's family looked mortified. The wedding guests were whispering among themselves, and somewhere in the distance, I could hear sirens. Probably someone had called the police about the disturbance. But all of that faded into background noise as I waited for my daughter to make the most important choice of her life. Finally, Emma spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I love what Richard represents. I love the security, the status, the idea of never having to worry about money or what people think of me. I love the way his family makes me feel important, sophisticated, worthy. She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. But I don't love him, not the way I should, not the way you loved Dad, even when he broke your heart. The admission hit Richard like a physical blow. His face went white, then red, then white again. Emma, what are you saying? We're supposed to get married in... He looked at his watch. We were supposed to get married 20 minutes ago. I'm saying that my mother is right, Emma said, slowly getting to her feet. I'm saying that I've become someone I don't recognize, someone who would choose appearances over love, status over family, money over the woman who sacrificed everything for me. She turned to face the crowd of wedding guests, many of whom were still recording with their phones. I'm sorry you all came here today for nothing. I'm sorry for wasting your time and creating this spectacle. But I can't marry someone I don't truly love just to maintain an image that was never real in the first place. Richard's father stepped forward, his face purple with rage. This is ridiculous! Emma, you're making the biggest mistake of your life. Our family has invested significant resources in this relationship, and you're throwing it all away for what? Some sentimental nonsense about loving your mother? No, Emma said, her voice growing stronger. I'm throwing it away because I finally remembered who I am and where I came from. I'm throwing it away because I'd rather be the daughter of a woman who built a $47 million empire from nothing than the wife of a man who thinks money makes him better than other people. She walked over to me, her wedding dress trailing in the dirt, and took my hands in hers. Mom, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I said things that can never be taken back, but if you'll let me, I want to spend the rest of my life trying to become the daughter you deserved all along." I looked into her eyes and saw something I hadn't seen in years: genuine remorse, real understanding, and the beginning of wisdom. "Emma, forgiveness isn't something you earn. It's something you choose to give. And I choose to forgive you, not because you deserve it, but because you're my daughter, and I love you." The crowd began to disperse, some disappointed by the lack of drama, others moved by what they had witnessed. Richard and his family left in a fury of expensive cars and wounded pride, but I barely noticed them. My attention was focused entirely on Emma, on the woman she was choosing to become in this moment. "So what happens now?" she asked. "I don't have a job anymore. I quit to plan this wedding. I don't have a place to live. I gave up my apartment to move in with Richard. I don't have anything except this ridiculous dress and the realization that I've been an awful person." I smiled, the first genuine smile I had given her in 2 years. "Now you come home with me, and we figure out how to rebuild our relationship. Now you learn what it really means to work for something instead of just expecting it to be handed to you. Now you discover that being rich isn't about how much money you have. It's about how rich your relationships are, how rich your character is, how rich your capacity for love and forgiveness can be." As we walked away from Grandview Manor together, Emma still in her wedding dress and me in my simple clothes, I realized that this had never really been about revenge. It had been about teaching my daughter the most important lesson of all, that love, respect, and family are the only things that truly matter, and that no amount of money or status can replace the bond between a mother and child. 6 months later, Emma was working alongside me in my businesses, learning the value of honest work and the satisfaction of building something meaningful. She had traded her designer clothes for work clothes, her social media presence for genuine relationships, and her pursuit of status for the pursuit of purpose. And every night, when we sat together in my apartment, the same apartment she had once been ashamed of, she would tell me about her day, ask for my advice, and remind me that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the chance to become who they were always meant to be. The wedding that never happened had given us both something far more valuable than any ceremony could have provided. It had given us back each other.